right? Scab labourers. Scab labouring. What is it to be a scab talkers? Scabs are exactly when you see people scab their conversation, scab talkers, scab labourers. When you tell someone to tell someone to tell someone. That's exactly the role of the media. But to understand fully, famously, what it is to be a worthy scab or a scab labourer, you're labouring constantly. You're a scab talk. You might say the old term crab talk. No, it's scab talk. Does that make perfect, unadulterated, unreserved sense of what the media do? They're scab conversators. They scab talk. They scab labour. They are scabbing. They're nothing but a scab. It's the art wave of scab. You have to qualify to be part of a fucking scab. You have to be a scab. Right? Scab labouring. Tell someone to tell someone. You hold people at ransom for something you haven't got. Right? Healing. Because like scab labouring, why do you think he's worked 1,440 minutes? You scab every element of your life with the word fascist regime. Fascist regime is scabbing. Scab labouring, paparazzi, Nazi, Italian fascist regime, the camera, which the world's only known for 120 years, so we're in a very juvenile, delinquent stage, and what it is to see it through the eyes of teenage retrievalists or retrievalists to a scabbing concession that's pure commission. Like you would even get a backpacker for your sales marketing squads here in Australia, in America. You'd even get backpackers penciled into your laws to get you pure commission because you're a punce racket. Like scab labourers, you're constantly scabbing. It's the massive art wave of scab labouring. So you labour non-stop. You're labouring scabs. Scab talkers. Do you know what a scab talker is? Exactly. You've got it in one. You've got the picture right now. What the paparazzi, what fascist regimes, they point the finger, they derivate the finger by pointing at a face, and then that takes away all the attention from themselves and buys themselves an ability to lay in the cut, right? Like scabs. And then they scab themselves some immunity. It doesn't act like a deterrent weapon, like a tactical short-range weapon or a weapons grade deterrent, but it contains every facet of scab labouring. It's not because it's strategic or even gangster, quite the contrary. You're held at ransom for something you haven't got. So scab labouring. Scab labouring is defined by narcissism. So there we got narcs and narking in a world where a country or any people, that's the percentage ratio of weighing one person up against every 1,000. And it's strikingly eerie and very creepy how that pencils itself into the $100 that you get for Twitter, YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. For every 1,000 hits you get, and people in this day and age, you know, one person sold for every 1,000 fucking likes or hits or something. But in a country like Australia, or people that are just scabbing constantly 24/7, these are firms, they got law firms to protect their scab labouring rackets. I mean, they're scab talkers, they're scab conversators, they're a constant front foot scab. They've had to perfect their element and perfect their transitional theories with every formal representation of one meets 1,000. Or sell one, sell a million, with the way in which celebrities, personalities, individuals of the world, who's who. But then that's just a concept. That's more like a landfill policy of all the missing files of every bitch that fucking sat amongst company and stole something, guilty via association, in opposed to the innocence of beauty, which is like the derivation of their cameras and their fingers in which to point at something so illustrious, so needful to scab and talk like they all want a piece of it. People having to give up on what they love for every 1,000 fucking people because they're good at what they do, finding just about everyone guilty of every 1,000 people in their life. Like, you don't have 1,000 brothers and sisters, you don't have 1,000 sons and daughters, you didn't know every one of your 1,000 members at school. And most people, you got 1,000 fake friends on Facebook and Instagram, and 1,000 out of every one, and 1,001 rabbit tails of people in your Twitter account, your Facebook account, you don't know or aren't worthy to fucking peep and probe and perv into your life and scab labor their way through the highlight that makes, let's say, the wound factor, like, to be a sopping wound. Scab, scab, scabs. If you were on TV with these scab laborers, because they scab 24/7 around the clock, 24/7, 365 days, with a law firm to, any area of life, right? Military, data retrievalists, anything. Surveyors, surveillance, hubbies. They don't have the pussy power to even stop them from thieving for their husband and children amongst their own men and so-called friends. It's a reputation thing that weighs itself up against credibility and job security, which is Australia, the most credit-reliant people in the world, but the paparazzi, the poorest people on the planet, because the markup of a 7-cent photograph, which is cheaper than the 10-cent factor, you can print it off yourself and you'll sell it for cold, hard cash, stick in your pocket, hip hop. And the highest markup in the world. It's more expensive, selling photographs more expensive than gold, more expensive than diamonds, more expensive than oil, more expensive than silver. And it's not even on the stock market. It's in people's personal pockets. The gap between the rich and the poor is a horizontal distance of tearaway suspects. And what it is to be able to address what scab labourers are, why they're constantly making this kind of apparel appeal to the public to keep it all scabbed up. Keep it all scabbed up. If you're on TV with them or live air broadcast and you were to mention they're a scab labourer and perfectly identify it, they'll cut. No, cut. But stop now, because like a scab, they don't want to bleed. Right? They're scabbed up. They don't want to bleed. They scab up and then they conceal themselves with but they always stay positioned like a wounding scab. Scab labour is constant. They're a scab forever. And they can't cover up. There's only limited to their cover up, like the scab on them. So they're always on the front foot because they're an exposed scab, like the Book of Revelations means to shed light, the omen factor. Omen means revelation. Omen means that which is revealed. It means light. It means Genesis chapter 1, verse 3, to shed light on that which was without form and void. They are scabs. They're scab labourers. Right? They're scab labourers. They steal people's jewels. They steal people's thoughts. They steal people's ideas, innovations. They steal stories. They're a story thief. Scab labouring. They're scab talkers. And they form like that. Little social groups, private cauldrons. Right? Witchcraft, private witchcraft of still photographs, people's lives. Just scab talkers anyway. Scab labouring. It's the art wave of scab labouring. It's not like saying labourers that scab or labouring to effect. It's an extension of the word scab. Scab labouring. And they labour. They are scab labourers. Right? 1 against every 1,000. You don't have it. That's why you're constantly scabbing to keep yourself in people's lives. And that's where the fascist aspect comes into it. To simply understand MK Ultra and CERN projects is that MK Ultra is a rock spider's MK Ultra is a rock spider's haven. The rock spider activity. Rock spiders are defined by people who drug and heavily sedate their prey to create spread eagles and subdued subjects and get access to 8 points of their life. So they create spread eagles in their hubs, in their CERN in their, right? Like in the I only heard 5 voices. They heard a spread eagle. They want a spread eagle in the drugging. Rock spiders start with the most vulnerable people in our world, with elderly people. Then they start with single mothers. They perform things like Oedipus complexities. and jealousy surrounding individual boys first and foremost. Boys are more sought after than girls. And that's where the MK Ultra fact comes into it. MK Ultra means rock spider, and CERN project means side project. But only in Australia do you find the accent side project, CERN project. CERN project. Australia is a side project, 1/3 of 1% of the world's population, in a place where the test phase of everything, socio, police tactics that they infiltrate into America, or the brutal tactics, everything, media tactics, anything. But they're not really that good at what they do. It's just that they're just subject to these things, and they can't cover it up. They're scabs. Scab labouring is a rights act in New South Wales that still exists to this day, surrounding the mining and people taking jewels and mines out of, sticking it like the diamonds of Sierra Leone or some shit, right? But it's more related to the narcissistic factor. Narcissism, like union movements, the unions themselves, right? We'll go back to this rock spider thing in a sec, because MK Ultra is, M is 4 letters, K is 4, like M is 4 legs, K is 4 legs, and the Ultra is the 2 fangs with the poisonous offset or whatever. So rock spider equals MK Ultra 442, like 4 legs, 2 fangs, or husband, wife, and 2 high heels. And CERN project, if you can break down the acronym CERN project, just means side project, even if RN was registered nurse to get them help in the end. But it's rock spider activity. It's not a drug and mind control method like David Icke or the whole world might say, as much as those things happen, but it's all rock spider activity. They establish themselves having rock spider manuals, rock spider theories, rock spider rituals, right? Through circles, like the five-pointed star, that relates to the spread eagle, that relates also to the video camera lens. These are things that have been built just before the development of the camera. And what it is to fail to turn, what it is to turn circles to triangles when you tell someone to tell someone to tell someone, and get undone when you drill fortified replicas. When you drill fortified replicas, you're fucked. Knowing that you did it with a camera too much, with those Canon lenses, you did it with the tripod factors, the old Canon tripod lens with the tripod itself, the circle itself. But here we are. We get to a stage where, I was talking here before, that's the rock spider factor, but so they want access to 8 points of their life quickly, and that's how rock spiders work. Oedipus complexities through the form of patricide, anything that's the major distancing mechanism of the world, SCAB talk. They try to keep everything well contained within highlighted commentary so that it keeps it nullified to a point where they can go back to it and register it so that it becomes an alarm setting capability. So a beep to a fucking dolphin, or if they hear it, they become quickly synonymous or quickly highlighted or alert, so that anywhere in the world that they walk, access to 8 points of their life, everywhere they go, they can bring something up and get their ultimate beam sensory attention. But that's like saying zeros and ones control the world. How long is a piece of string? The thick of it and the length of it. They're not qualified at what they do. It's just a short period of time at the end of the millennium period, just before the miraculous toppling. Why do you think God's people have been waiting forever? They've gone without everything to get the revelation. The revelation that is not at the hands of these evil people that conduct their own theory, right? God's people in the end are going to receive the rapture, the glory, everything that they've been waiting for. And it was a blessing for their children. The Pentateuch, or whatever the hell it is, right? Where you can even see the word Christ, or Christ referred to in the book of Deuteronomy 3 times, if you can believe that. This was never designed for everyone sacrificially through the time. To get to that end, where you see this seeping wound occur, the book of Revelations, people have just become a wound, a sopping wound. And that's because of these scab labourers, and the world isn't defined quite like the way you see it. It's very private. Even the tax systems are written up like a wine menu. Even the new laws, which they'll say are socialist reform, it's not really a socialist reform. It's a unionist hellhole. that's got nothing left but their own guilty stains, right? The everlasting wound supply that redeeming love has been God's theme and shall be till he dies, until that last second coming sacrifice undergoes all this. The wound factor is critical for people to understand just what it is to enter into the branch of survivors, or the survivor, or survivors, to understand that you must. But scab labourers is like the revolution. It's been 104,000 years of revolution, park break to now revelation. Right? This wound factor is like people that have hot showers and never cold ones. You boil pasta, you boil up your pasta with hot water, but when you take pasta out the hot water, you put it back into cold water to get the springiness in the pasta, keep it retained. But people are always having hot showers 24/7. They're becoming a sopping wound every time they're walking down the street in 36 degrees temperature, 32 degrees temperature. Their pores actually open up. When you get mucus or some acne or some infection on your skin or fingers or something, and they'll mention putting a hot washer as hot as you can stand to your skin to open up the pores to help release the pus whilst you recover and get antibiotics or whatever. But why are people having hot showers every day of their life? They're opening up their goddamn wounds and their skin pores, basically, their dermal skeleton, and they're exposing all of their insides, and yet it wouldn't matter if they didn't stink or not. People wouldn't be able to smell it, but the whole world's engulfed with the space factor being taken away from us. You're not closing it up. You're an exposed wound, you're exposed scabs. It creates part of the telltale conformity behind global warming and climate change, because it's so polluted our airways that filters even into our family home. You've kept that wound positioned, like distilled photography, like distilled concentration. And no solution to it, because for every bit of man-made material, even babies, it takes up space. And where space is taken out of the equation of mankind, in any case scenario, even when you lay down to bed, you can't breathe. There's no space-time continuum is taken out of the equation. That's why it's hot. It's hot because it's not even cold. You just literally do not have the 5-meter rule in your life. When people that are exposed or under that need laminar flow units, even when they need to keep germs away, require 41 feet radius when you need 5 meters diameter. But you ain't got it. The way you keep in your house is like a mousetrap. You like say, are we men or mice? You scab labourers are like people that scathe over people's nest eggs to feed your own tearaway suspects. Your own distancing mechanism, the gap between the rich and the poor. The gap between the rich and the poor is a horizontal plateau that's defined by tearaway suspects and ill confessionalists that hide behind a affirmation of some sort, and they lie, cheat and steal to harrow those consequences. And it becomes the scab labouring factor. You could tell everyone, you'll rip apart someone's life, and you do it legally to be able to help you move forward, even though in a lot of cases compensation isn't able to be pursued. But how fucking convenient, how goddamn frequent, and how goddamn desperate in damage control do you find people 24/7 scab labouring? They're established to be a scab. They're established scabs. They're scab talkers. They will scale over your fucking nest egg, scathe over it and scour it for nest eggs and take it back to their nest of mice wherever they reside. It's such a peephole life that you people live, you can't even fit furniture in your front door of your house. You can't even fit furniture through the door of your house. You're looking for such a very small hole. You're looking for a hole, and you want people to sort of help you redefine holes. Architecturally speaking, you don't even know how to erect your life. If you weren't impotent enough to play with the end of your penis for a period of time before you ever have sex once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, every month of your life, your whole adult life, and you thought that you weren't impotent, What is it to even play with it in the midst of sex if you've had sex 500 times in a decade or more to only get your dick sucked or fellatio occur? And then you want to tell us that you're not impotent? But then like scab labouring is like, no, you don't even know what to do with it. If it meant scab labouring, you're scabbing all of your labour. You will even get women or men to suck your dick as if the impotence factor wasn't obvious to note, like concern yourself in the project that you're a fucking scab. And scabbing relates to a lack of work. You will steal work. You don't provide any work as an alternative to like do it yourself. Fuck yourself. Look after yourself. And ultimately work to make things done or make things work, like life and like preservation. Anything that takes away the greater dependence on oneself is corruption, and you know that with scab talkers. It's not crab talk, they're called scab labourers, scab talkers. Do you know what a scab is now? What scabs are? You have to qualify to be part of those scabs. You have to be a qualified scab to ever be seen worthy and fit by them. Otherwise, the most two common hallucinations in the world is that of taste and smell. Because they're so fucking sensitive, they're a fucking scab talker. They're scab labourers. They scab labour. They're labouring, scab labouring. Anything to keep them away from confronting their guilty association, their guilty stain. Jane Austen, the great Jane Austen again says, a stain of illegitimacy, unbleached by nobility and wealth, is certainly a stain indeed, and that relates to the scabbing of these people. They work 24/7 around the clock. They make people, brainwash them to believe that it's normal. They'll brainwash them to believe it's part of their job. But if they didn't know that they were scabs, just like telemarketers don't know they're scabs and beggars, don't you know what scabs and beggars are? They stop you for 1 minute, you ask for a cigarette or $2 on the street, you go to jail. But if they do it, and they even know your name before you start, that's rather eerie and creepy. But that is scabbing, it's begging, and it's a lame duck excuse. And what is beggars' belief? To only have all this story and firms and everything confirming their association via guilt, and develop the isotype and the contracts in which to draw up scabs. And it's a whole system of scabbing. Not that your brothers and sisters or sons and daughters, aunties and uncles or friends and family or government and gang. You're just scabs because you're the rebellious free world that don't know how to live. You're just the Holocaust kids that gave birth to some Holocaust kids that had to learn off mummy and daddy, only to leave home and become part of some scabs and set the whole world up to defend your ass because you need intervention. Scab labourers. So you're very determined and you're very persistent. If you didn't know where your persistent detail came from, you must have thought you had pussy power to prevent you from stealing for your husband and children. To find you got no pussy power to stop your own firm and your own intelligence hub or little private cauldron or friends from spending any more time. You must be the most boring beehive minds of mediocrity in the whole wide world to reach out to everyone. I mean, scabs are scabs, and scab labourers is ultimately what you call narcissism. Just quickly, narcissism is defined by two major areas, just like credit-reliant people are defined by two main areas, right? Narcissistics are defined by one, people who talk behind somebody's back and not to them. So they tell someone to tell someone to tell someone. They have a forged relationship. They have a forged industry. They have forged material. They have forged documentation, forged conversations. Their whole life is forged. That's narcissism. They narc. So narking provides the responsibility and promotion amongst people that you are not friends and family and, privy to and confident. So that's the whole union factor, or being taught to face up, complain, feedback, right? Narcissism. And like the system where we are, Australia's the most narcissistic hellhole in the world because you're not, and two, narcissism is defined by narcotics abuse, and alcohol is the most destructive narcotics in the world. And then you got the Anunnaki factor. There's a million Matthews, there's a million Muhammads, but do you know a million Annas? And to find Anunnaks, and to know that that's where you start targeting these little congressional library books where these little ritual manuals might be, in the ranks of people that write these little ritual manuals, and then the Nephilims are just some nephews of somebody that want to fuck the daughters of men that know Anna and know these little chicks and that do the scab laboring thing. You know, little girls are responsible for all theft from the beginning of time. So being the most credit-reliant people in the world is defined by two things. One, reputation, first and foremost. Even when you steal copyright, you steal a story, you scab your story, you'd be at pace with stolen copyright distribution the same way. Right? One's nominated for political rank, the other one that you've been stealing from, even policies, even ideas, intellectual property, copyright, right? They're in political prison, suffering sanction, held back through some form of drug or sedation or some embargo, some obstruction, some kind of embezzlement. Credit-reliant people, as much as the biggest gamblers in the world, the most prescribed people in the world, and this all relates to all this scab laboring, an entire cauldron of scab laborers, scab talkers. It's not crabbed out. You're scabs, and yet they're all grown up now. What don't they know about? What don't you know about poverty or scabs? Scab children from the same generation of the 90s teenagers that grew up to be the Generation X, or you know, and everything, the Zennials and the Ys. They're scab laborers. They're scabs. It's all part of a short run of luck and a short run of established friendship off the back of a scab lifestyle, an established scab laboring expedition, a non-expedition island of brother drinks and half-naked freaks to make people think that that's what they want, but it's all a scabbed fortune. It's a forged estimate. Regardless of what you thought you did earn, let me believe you, anything that takes away the greater dependence on oneself is like having to look at you in the mirror and have you define yourself by your name. And if you don't know your name, then check your transaction history, and you'll find that you've got no fucking transaction of investment. You're all a bunch of little investigators. A desperate attempt to claim all chronological history as your own, and a stage account, like a stagecoach robbery that you had no part, you were total, you're the Holocaust children. The third generation called iniquity. By the time the fourth comes in, you wouldn't even have a clue of what survived you, because you're not talking about it. You didn't do it. You're scabbed out. And if you're scabbed out, even your own politicians aren't talking about that which you do. There'll be no confessions. You're scab laboring. A desperate attempt holding everybody at ransom for something you haven't got. You're a beehive mind of mediocrity like that, but holding everybody at ransom for something you haven't got, just like the impotence, just like the lack of transaction, like fair wage practice, just like the ability to promote, the ability to allow promotion. You just push in, you scab, you do everything to bring each other down because you're so fucking credit reliant living on an island. You've only got your reputation and your faces for your fucking fortune. What is Australia without a telephone? What is Australia without a boat? What is Australia without a fucking circle? And a small one, because it can never be that big. Scab laboring. The art wave of the media. Scab laborers.